might have been like a crop improvement thing. You isolate the best ones, and then those are the ones you want to grow. Also, would you be kind of like weirded out if you went to the store and there were like lots of weird different shaped bananas that are all different colors? And, okay, I mean, we're used to finding the same product. No matter where you go to look for a banana, the bananas look roughly the same, right? So if you want that consistency in terms of what you're getting, the way to do that is to limit the genetic variation. But then you have these byproducts where they're potentially able to be wiped out by disease in a single go. Okay. Are there concerns that people have about genetically modified foods? What are some of the things that people are usually worried about? Yeah.
Well, so there are plants that are like I forgot the name of it, but basically like say the tomato beetle. For example, say the tomato, the farmer doesn't want the beetle eating the tomato, so he gets a tomato plant that's been genetically modified, and it produces its own toxin that like the beetle doesn't like. Well, then people are afraid. What if that, like, if it kills those beetles, or if it annoys them, what is it going to do inside our body?
Okay, right. So if something is abhorrent to a beetle, it might not be too great for you either. The converse of that is you can also engineer the plants to be resistant to Roundup. So if you're spraying pesticide, then it doesn't kill the plant that you're growing, but it would kill the other, or herbicide, then it would kill the other plants around it. So you might have the outside of the thing covered in a toxic substance. Yeah.
Yeah, like also like when we use a DDT is still like a popular thing. Like people didn't really like necessarily care about what was on the outside of the food, although they still like we still ate tomatoes that had pesticides on them, as opposed to inside the actual tomato. So like you could wash it off, but it's not all that come off. So really there's the argument that GMOs are worse than the actual use of pesticides.
Right, okay, so there might be some concerns either way on that. So if you're trying to kill the things around your crops, then there could be negative effects for us, whichever way you do it. Are there other concerns that people have about GMOs? Yeah.
There's some parents that think that GMOs make their children autistic because the genetically modified food goes into their reproductive system and passes on to the community.
All right. Yeah, we don't really fully understand what causes autism. That is a big question in science. It's not been sorted out. The information we have so far suggests that it's not vaccines that does it, but I don't know if there's been a lot of study of whether like factory farmed foods or like so some component of what you're using in farming, whether it be genetic modification or not, is involved. So it's an interesting concern. I haven't heard that one before. But there is, people talk about, in general, a concern that it's not as healthy to eat GMOs. There have been long-term studies in mice, and in those studies, they've determined that there are not any more negative health effects for the mice that eat GMOs as opposed to other large mass-produced foods. But there hasn't been a long-term longitudinal study in humans yet. Because this is a relatively new technology, and you'd have to track humans for much longer to figure out if it causes higher rates of cancer or something like that. But again, it doesn't look like that in mice, and mice are usually the model mammal that's used when we want to know about the health effects of something. Okay, does anyone have food allergies? Yeah, do any of you want to volunteer what you're allergic to? Yeah?
Shellfish.
Shellfish? Okay, yeah, that's a pretty common one. Is anybody allergic to peanuts? Yeah, so food allergies are relatively common. Let's say, for instance, you have an allergic reaction to a particular protein produced by that food. You might want to know that that protein is not contained in your food, right? Yeah, so you can avoid it so you don't have an allergic reaction. So there's a concern about labeling with genetically modified foods because they actually don't necessarily have to be labeled with the things that they're modified with. So have you heard of flavor saver tomatoes? So this is a genetically modified food that was really kind of a popular thing to discuss in the early 90s, but I'm going to talk about it now. But basically, do you know where tomatoes grow? Like what kind of environment? Warm and humid. So tomatoes don't grow well in New York during the winter. So we usually get them shipped from somewhere else. You see them here, like Mexico, South America. But if you could engineer tomatoes that did not die when there was frost, you could make a lot of money, right? Okay, so they isolated the gene from fish that allows fish not to freeze in icy waters and inserted it into the tomatoes. Okay, if you're someone who's avoiding fish or allergic to fish, you don't necessarily know that the protein that results from the gene that they inserted is the one that you have an allergic reaction to, but you might want to know that the tomato has been modified that way so that you could figure that out for yourself. Okay, so the FDA actually only says that you have to label something as genetically modified if 5% of the DNA has been changed. Okay, think about this for a moment. So, it's like, what's the genetic difference between you and a chimpanzee?
Like less than
It's about
0.1.
1%. So you to entirely different species is only about 1%. You're about 5% different from an orangutan. So the reality of it is nobody is changing 5% of the genome of anything. So basically no one has to label their foods as genetically modified. Right, so I think there's probably some lobbying that went into that cutoff mark by agribusinesses, right? But the issue is not only do you not have to label it as genetically modified, you can label it as non-GMO if it's less than 5. So have you ever seen a food that's labeled GMO?
Maybe 0%
No,
fat
you
is
only
just
see
under
non-GMO, right?
percentage.
Okay, so, you know,
According to
we
FDA.
don't know that GMOs have any other negative effects beyond the other
Yeah, that's what-
mass-produced foods that we eat. But if you're someone who wants to make that choice for yourself, or you're worried about allergens in your food, you don't actually have the information in order to do that. There's also concerns about patenting living organisms. So, you know, one example, have any of you seen Food Inc.? Okay, so in Food Inc., you know, Monsanto is the company that's featured there, but, you know, they put a lot of money, they put a lot of effort into researching and developing these genetically modified crops. So understandably, they want to legally protect that investment that they've made. But they've patented the whole organism. So bees don't really care about whether one field has GMO crops and the next one has non-GMO crops. So there's cross-pollination that can occur. And Monsanto and other companies have successfully won lawsuits against farmers that have neighboring farms who are inadvertently selling their patented variety because of cross-pollination. So there's also legal issues on that front too. All right, so our gels should have been running long enough. Press the button with the hand and the stop sign. So once you've pressed stop, reach over to the side of the green power source and turn it off. Then carefully unplug the cords from the green power source. And once that's unplugged, you can push down on the clear pegs to lift the lid off of your box. Okay, so you should see that the dye has moved, right? Okay, so as I said, we actually have to put it under a UV camera to see our DNA fragments. And I'm bringing each group, I'm bringing each group a numbered tray. So make note of your group's number, so you'll know which gel image belongs to you. Okay, so once you have your numbered tray, just pick up the tray in the gel box until it opens the gel itself into your numbered tray.
Wait, what? Pick up the
Oh man, I saved it.
I think we can we tip this in our box?
Yeah, just
Are you putting the entire tray or just the
So
gel?
no water. We're supposed to
The entire tray. Is it just a
take a
gel?
little bit on there.
Yeah, let's put the entire tray. Oh yeah, slide it in.
Can't use this.
Just take a picture.
So slow.
Oh, wait. Here we go.
No.
Are you to take this from you?
Get them? Okay, I'll grab them.
Thank you.
Good job.
This is really cool.
All right, so while I'm imaging these, just hang out for a couple minutes, and then I'll pull them up in the front of the room so that you can see.